Hey guys, today I wanted to go over with you the baroreceptor reflex, and what this is going to do is basically regulate our blood pressure based on blood pressure changes that are sudden, pretty quick, short term. And so first off, baroreceptors are located within your aorta, as drawn here, as well as in your carotid arteries. And so what those are going to do is they're going to sense, oh, is our blood pressure high enough or is it low enough? They stretch that sense, they're mechanical. And so if you have high blood pressure, there's going to be more action potentials from these baroreceptors. And if you have more action potentials, then it's going to go through the whole cycle and lower your blood pressure. And if you have low blood pressure, you're going to have less action potentials. Your interpreting or integrating centers are going to accommodate for that and vasoconstrict as well as other things to get your blood pressure back up. So let's go through the whole cycle. First off, we got our baroreceptors here, and in your carotid artery baroreceptors, if those are sending action potentials, they're going to be through cranial nerve number 9, or also known as the glossopharyngeal nerve, and that's going to travel to your integrating center in the medulla oblongata. You're also going to have another nerve, the number 10, which is your vagus nerve, which is coming from the baroreceptor in your aorta. That's also going to travel to the integrating center in the medulla oblongata, and that's where it's going to interpret, do we need to increase blood pressure or do we need to lower it, right? So from there, it's going to interpret that. There's two methods of working this. Is sympathetic nerves are going to increase blood pressure, parasympathetic nerves, vagus nerves, are going to decrease blood pressure. It depends on the situation, but if we want to increase blood pressure, then we're going to activate the sympathetic nerves and inhibit this parasympathetic nerve. Sympathetic nerves are going to do a couple things. They're going to go directly to the heart to increase your heart rate. You're going to also travel to the adrenal medulla, wherein you'll produce epinephrine and norepinephrine, which will also increase heart rate and contraction. You also have nerves going to the arteries themselves, and that'll vasoconstrict, increasing blood pressure. So you're increasing cardiac output, venous return, and your blood pressure is going up, all because of the sympathetic. If we inhibit parasympathetic, then we're not slowing the heart down anymore, and we're going to be increasing blood pressure. So a situation, just for an example of how this all would work together, say you stand up really quick, there's going to be a sudden drop in blood pressure up here by your aorta as well as in your carotid arteries. It's going to sense that. We're going to send less action potentials. Your integrating centers are going to be like, hey, we don't have enough blood pressure. So they're going to send out signals sympathetically to increase blood pressure. So sympathetic regulation happens when you stand up, receptors receive it. They're like, hey, we need more. And they're noticing that cardiac output's down, venous returns down, and blood pressure's down. We have less stretch on these baroreceptors, less action potentials. And because of that, the cardiovascular interpreting centers say, hey, we need to get things back up. They send signals through the sympathetic nerves, increasing epinephrine, norepinephrine, vasoconstriction, as well as heart rate. And increasing cardiac output, increasing blood pressure, increasing the sympathetic nerves, inhibiting the parasympathetic. This increases the contraction rate of the heart as well as the strength of contraction, so you're pumping out more volume per pump. Something to keep in mind, and these are auto-regulation of the blood vessels themselves, not necessarily the heart, but of like the actual blood vessels. Myogenic regulation, this is all based off of stretch receptors within the arteries. If the arteries have a high blood pressure and they're stretched, then they're going to want to dilate, they experience a stretch, and so once that stretch happens, you open calcium channels that activates smooth muscle contraction, which if you contract smooth muscle within the arteries, then you increase peripheral resistance and you're good to go. And then we have paracrines. Paracrines. And so the two ways paracrines can work is with active and reactive hyperemia, and those are two kind of different things. First off, though, we have, backing up, myogenic regulation can only vasoconstrict. You only can increase peripheral resistance. Paracrines, though, they vasodilate, so they decrease blood pressure. And so the way that's going to work is through nitric oxide and adenosine, and those are powerful vasodilators. And let's start with active hyperemia. This is when you have metabolic activity, and with metabolic activity, you're going to be using up oxygen and creating carbon dioxide. And when you have high levels of carbon dioxide and low levels of oxygen, they want to increase blood flow to the area. So you want to pump more oxygen to the area. So these receptors are going to vasodilate. They're going to release nitric oxide and adenosine, vasodilate, and increase blood flow to the area so you can continue that metabolic activity. In reactive hyperemia, this is when there isn't metabolic activity. It's just that in this situation, we're lowering oxygen levels and increasing carbon dioxide levels. And this can happen when you have a blockage in an artery. And so the same response happens, but instead of metabolic activity, it's a blockage. And you're still going to vasodilate with nitric oxide and adenosine so that blood flow can still get to those tissues more effectively. And that is myogenic and paracrine regulation of vasoconstriction and vasodilation, as well as the baroreceptor reflex.